So I'm here in Shanghai, China, and I've been here since before the outbreak started, and I've seen and experienced everything that China has done to contain and solve this really deadly, horrible threat. I know some friends and family back home have been asking me, and so I thought I'd put together a little video here and kind of show you some imagery and walk you through some of the things that I've experienced over the last couple of months. Let's take a look at the situation that we're faced with now, and then I'll walk you through some of the things that I went through for the past couple of months in terms of what China did to solve this issue.
Okay, so this is a graph showing the early stages of the outbreak in China. Now this goes for about 2 weeks because about 2 weeks ago is when things really started picking up in the United States. And so we want to take a look at the similarities and differences that we're seeing between China at this time and what we're seeing with America today. Interesting to note here that on January 21st, lockdowns were announced by the Chinese government. And by January 23rd, the morning of the 23rd, Hubei province was locked down in its entirety. And this was when there were only 835 confirmed cases in all of China. So now let's take a look at what this looks like with the numbers from America overlaid on top of this. And as you can see, the United States was going along a little slower than the growth in China. I think this illustrates the lack of testing that we were seeing happening in the US. And only over the last few days have we seen testing really ramp up. But what has me worried is that we can already see the growth is now outpacing what we were seeing in China. Now looking a little broader, we can see that China continued to grow quite exponentially over the next couple of weeks until finally the measure started paying off and the number started to decrease and the total cases started to flatline. You can see that jump that happened on February 11th, February 12th. What happened here was that health authorities decided they were going to start counting clinically confirmed cases as part of their official numbers instead of just test confirmed cases. The first thing this did was it enabled those that were sick to get the adequate care and to get placed where they needed to be placed in order to get the treatment they needed. The second aspect of this is it mobilized an entire unit that was dedicated to contact tracing and isolating and quarantining those who had come in contact with people who were now confirmed to be sick.
So there are four things that China's been doing to solve the issue of coronavirus. The first one is social distancing and isolation. Second is all about community maintenance and community spread, stopping the community spread. The second one is all about stopping the community spread, or reducing it as much as possible. The third is all about case discovery and treatment. And finally, the last is about stopping the long-distance spread.
In the first couple of days after China announced all these containment efforts, there were runs on the grocery stores. And I can honestly say that at this time, this is when I felt the most afraid. Being new in a foreign country, in China of all places, where I speak at an elementary level at best, I was worried that I was going to have a problem getting food I needed to survive. Within 36 hours, it was proven that the supply lines had not been broken, and the supplies were getting restocked on a daily basis. With the exception of a few things like masks and hand sanitizer, most things were in very good supply. So looking at the social distancing and isolation policies that China put into place, it all started with the lockdown of Wuhan and Hubei province, which we talked about a little bit earlier. But it expanded from there. Other cities and provinces that had clusters and were experiencing growth of the virus, they also went into lockdown. Now, these pictures you're seeing are just from Shanghai, and Shanghai never went into a full lockdown. But still, social isolation was rampant in this city. Nobody went to parks. Nobody went to restaurants. Nobody went out at all. You didn't see anybody when you went out for a walk. Everybody stayed inside. So gatherings of people such as conventions, sporting events, movie theaters, gyms, they were all immediately canceled or closed. Offices and workplaces closed completely. What amazed me as a Westerner was just the fact that everybody immediately complied. It was like overnight, the entire activity of the city just came to a stop. It was impressive to see, and Very, very strange, very eerie. I have a friend who works at Shanghai Pudong Airport. It's the largest airport in Shanghai. This was a picture they sent me around 9 p.m. during the height of the virus outbreak here in China. This is usually an airport that is packed with people, almost shoulder to shoulder, no matter where you are. The terminals are filled, the gate areas are packed. There are constantly flights in and out of this airport. And to see this airport completely empty is just mind blowing to me. And this is the kind of level of isolation that we saw here in China. The next big measure was around community transmission prevention. Every day we were encouraged to wash our hands and disinfect regularly. It was plastered everywhere and was mentioned all over the news. In order to be outside at all, it was necessary to be wearing a mask. It was a requirement by law. To enter buildings, restaurants, grocery stores, you were required to wear a mask. You were given hand sanitizer before entering, and as you see in this picture here, you have your temperature taken and you were checked in. Public buildings, riding buses, taking taxis, subways, hailing a Didi, which is the Chinese version of Uber, all required you to be wearing a mask.
Now, China has implemented the widespread use of these digital QR codes. They are used mainly for tracking and alerting people to when they have been in an area that is known to have someone who has been diagnosed with COVID-19. Almost anywhere you go now requires you to show your QR code. If you have a green code, it means you're free to go. You're free to move around wherever you want within your city. If you're yellow, it means you need to be monitored, you need to get checked up. And if you're red, it means you are now at high risk of having been infected with coronavirus and need to immediately go to a hospital for checkup. These codes are refreshed daily, as the more places you travel, the more likely you have come in contact with more people. These QR codes have become a mainstay in everyday life here in China.
The emphasis is always on community support. My own apartment building came to disinfect my apartment unit during the height of cases in Shanghai. Needless to say, my entire apartment smelled like bleach for most of that day, but I welcomed it. In the elevators in my apartment building and many other buildings in Shanghai, there are tissues placed inside, and you take one and you can use that to touch the buttons of the elevator with. Other major measures were focused on case discovery and treatment. Upon discovery of a confirmed case, quick and effective contact tracing measures were put into place. To enter any public area, your temperature is taken. Residential communities issued passes for healthy residents when they would leave their homes, and would only be allowed back in by returning their pass and being checked for temperature again. Anyone found to be symptomatic was promptly taken to fever clinics. These were normally used for quick checkups and for prescriptions that have now become the frontline triage. At these fever clinics, you will be tested and examined. If you are a suspected case, you will be put under mandatory quarantine. This could be at a designated facility or at your home. If you are not immediately suspected, you are asked to self-quarantine. In either case, your community, most of these communities are large apartment buildings or compounds of buildings. They are informed of your status. And this is to let them know to be vigilant and to ensure others in community are vigilant and help with the enforcement of quarantine. They also help with providing supplies. Someone is always designated to be the supply runner for those in quarantine in a community, and they're expected to deliver supplies daily to those who cannot leave their homes. If you test positive for COVID-19, patients are immediately transferred to one of the 2 designated hospitals for COVID-19 here in Shanghai, or if you're a minor, there's a designated children's hospital. These measures are still in place today, and it's almost impossible to leave your home without getting monitored by the entire community. If you show any sign of symptoms, you will go in for testing and get a checkup, and your close contacts will be identified very quickly and also monitored.
I know I said there was a fourth thing, and it's all about what China is doing to stop the inflow of people who have been infected overseas coming back into China. But that's rapidly evolving, and in fact, by the time that I got to this point in making this video, some new rules were already implemented and announced. So what I want to do is go back and make sure I'm getting all those right, so that when I make a video on that, I will give you all the best and up-to-date information. So look for that in the next couple of days. I think you can see how extreme and intense some of the containment measures have been here in China. And in my opinion, they've been necessary. The thing that really got us through this has been the fact that we've stayed so isolated, that China was disinfecting and sterilizing everything: handrails, stairways, elevators, everything. And when we were out, we protected ourselves. We wore masks. We had hand sanitizer everywhere. We were monitored for our temperature and our health everywhere we went. And it's these sorts of measures that have gotten us to where we are today, which is only one confirmed case of community spread in the last week. And that's the kind of effort it takes. We all have to say goodbye to one another right now, and that sucks. It's not easy. It's not fun. I personally got really nerdy with tracking and watching all the news on what was happening with the virus. I also watched a lot of YouTube. I watched Netflix. I did a lot of things that probably you're doing right now. I've gotten through it. And it just takes everybody pitching in, everyone doing their part. Stay isolated, stay strong, and stay healthy.